So thank you for coming out tonight. As I was thinking about my talk tonight, it occurred to me that I wanted to talk about the challenge of uncertainty because of the new year. Tomorrow night at midnight we start a new year, and this is a time of year usually a lot of us are thinking about New Year's resolutions or intentions or plans. But the reality is we really don't know what awaits us. We don't know what the new year will bring. And most of us in the West are so overscheduled and so overbooked and overorganized that we often don't think of that. We just sort of go day to day with our tight schedules, and that leaves us, I think, more vulnerable sometimes to getting blindsided by things that can happen in terms of the uncertainty of our lives. This is always a time of year when I'm really thinking about this. In 10 days I'll be 67, and as I get older, I'm much more aware of the looming uncertainties in my life and the life of my family and friends. But in as much as we plan or have intentions or make plans, the cosmic joke is that we really have no control over much of what happens. We're really at the mercy of forces beyond ourselves. And the painful truth is that neither we nor those we love or care about can be completely safe or completely free from possible harm or loss. And this loss or this change can happen in an instant. It can happen in the blink of an eye, often when we don't anticipate it. And I think when we're overbooked and overscheduled, the likelihood that something comes along and knocks us over is greater because we're not holding the knowledge of uncertainty as we probably need to. As you probably know, the primary firewall that we build in terms of dealing with uncertainty is the defense mechanism of denial. And denial is really blocking out that which is unpleasant or we don't want to have to think about, like loss, death, injury, accidents. And denial is important. I mean, we need it. It's really useful in small doses. It's something we all depend on. But if we live our lives in a state of denial, it really becomes a problem because it keeps us from seeing life as it really is. We sort of live in this state of denial where we think everything's just going to chug along nicely, and we don't really embrace the full breadth of what life holds for us, some of which is not always very pleasant. And we do this largely unconsciously. We don't necessarily are conscious of the ways in which we employ denial. We just do it. It's sort of it's an autopilot kind of thing that we do. And we use it to avoid anxiety, uncertainty about ourselves, about our lives, about the lives of those we love and care about. We know, as the Buddha teaches, that all things are impermanent. Everything changes constantly. That's central teaching to the Dharma, to the Buddha's teachings. The Pali word is anicca, which translates as impermanence. And that's really the nature of, that's really what brings uncertainty into our lives, is this impermanent nature of all things. So we know that, as the Buddha taught, that all the things we love and care about will eventually go away, including our own lives. We just don't know when or how that's going to happen, and therein lies the uncertainty of life. But to fully embrace that, to fully embrace the anxiety of that uncertainty is really the price of being a fully awake, a fully conscious human being. That if we try to push that away, then we're limiting our lives, we're limiting our experience of life, and we're not living a fully conscious, awakened life. You'll often hear folks say, well, it's not fair, or it's a flaw, it's what's wrong with this happening this way. And it's just a difficulty I think we have in letting go, that we can't let go of seeing things as we wish they would be. We can't let go of this notion that things should be different than the way they are. And at the extreme outer limit, when we're hit with this, the awareness of the vulnerability of all things, the vulnerability of our own lives and those we love, it's easy to get swept into panic, despair, depression. We can really get knocked over by that, being hit by that awareness. And we use lots of means to try to distract ourselves from that uncertainty in our lives. We overeat, we overspend, we shop too much, we use drugs and alcohol, we engage in all kinds of compulsive behaviors just in an effort to keep that awareness at bay. But one of the benefits of our practice, one of the benefits of spiritual practice, is that it does provide us with some tools to embrace that uncertainty, to embrace the things in life that we've been keeping out by using denial. And when we employ these tools, and I'll talk about some of them in a few minutes, we're better able to come to terms with the anxiety of uncertainty in a conscious, open, awakened way. And as a result, our lives become more integrated. We become fully aware, fully conscious, fully awake. That's one of the promises that the Dharma, that the Buddha's teaching offers us. Because we're no longer expending energy trying to avoid or deny or push away that which is true. This is from Pema Chodron. She says, quote, "When things fall apart and we're on the verge of we know not what, the test for each of us is to stay on that brink and not concretize. The spiritual journey is not about heaven and finally getting to a place that's really swell. In fact, that way of looking at things is what keeps us miserable. Thinking that we can find some lasting pleasure and avoiding pain is what the Buddha called samsara, a hopeless cycle that goes round and round endlessly and causes us to suffer greatly." She goes on to say, "The very first noble truth of the Buddha points out that suffering is inevitable for human beings as long as we believe that things last, that they don't disintegrate, that they can be counted on to satisfy our hunger for security. From this point of view, the only time we ever know what's really going on is when the rug is pulled out and we can't find anywhere to land. We use these situations either to wake ourselves up or to put ourselves to sleep. Right now, in the very instant of groundlessness, is the seed of taking care of those who need our care and discovering our goodness." End quote. I think it's generally accepted that the thing that keeps us from embracing the uncertainty or seeking certainty in our lives is fear. Fear is the thing, I think, that drives that. And I think that the appeal of lots of religious fundamentalism is that fear, the wish to see things as black and white, to have concrete answers. You know, if you do well and do good, you'll end up in heaven, or this will happen, giving you a highly structured way of living and trying to remove that uncertainty. I think that's the appeal of many of those more fundamentalist belief systems. You know, it's really a search for surety in the world, really fixed ideas that help us avoid that anxiety of uncertainty. But that's not what our path teaches. The Buddha does not offer that. He doesn't offer surety. He offers tools to deal with the uncertainty, but he asks us to embrace that uncertainty. And he offers us, as a result of that, is, again, the fullness of life. But if you look at fundamentalism and you look at how pervasive it is on the planet today in all kinds of cultures and all kinds of religious systems, you know, we really get a sense of how badly that's worked out. I mean, it creates conflict, it creates all kinds of pretty terrible problems. So I would argue that it takes a great deal of courage for us to open to the uncertainty of our lives. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a scary thing to do. To tolerate the ambiguity of life, because that's what we're talking about. To give up the illusion of safety and certainty. What we're called upon to do is become what Pema Chodron again calls spiritual warriors. You know, we really have to go into battle against this need for certainty in our lives. This is from the author Tony Schwartz. He says, quote, "Let go of certainty. The opposite isn't uncertainty. It's openness, curiosity, and a willingness to embrace paradox rather than choose up sides. The ultimate challenge is to accept ourselves exactly as we are, but never stop trying to learn and grow. Close quotes. So as we all know, just as our bodies crave oxygen, I think our minds are drawn to certainty. We always go there. That's sort of a draw that we go because it reduces the fear, it reduces the anxiety, at least temporarily. But this illusion of certainty that we create in our minds and that we try to cultivate is really the opposite of safety because it hardens and it narrows our vision. It gives us tunnel vision. It says, if I'm going to commit and believe that this is the way things are, I have to exclude all these other possibilities, and my life becomes narrower and narrower. And when I'm hit with new information that injects uncertainty into the situation, I immediately reflexively try to push it away because I can't, it does not compute. It does not allow me to continue to sort of whistle through the graveyard, if you will, to deny the reality of life. So the only real antidote to that search for certainty is to cultivate what they call in the Zen tradition the don't know mind. Just an open curiosity. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's coming, but I'm going to be open to whatever it is. I'm not going to lock down and try to develop a sense of certainty in my life. Another way to think of this, embracing uncertainty, I think, is to look at the Buddha's teaching on right view. And if you recall, right view is part of the Noble Eightfold Path that the Buddha taught. And he talks about how right view supports wisdom and defining their wisdom as seeing things as they really are, not as we wish them to be, but as they really are. That right view is opening to that, life as it is. And this is from Thich Nhat Hanh on right view. He says, quote, "Our happiness and the happiness of those around us depend on our degree of right view. Touching reality deeply, knowing what is going on inside and outside of ourselves, is the way to liberate ourselves from the suffering that is caused by wrong perceptions. Right view is not an ideology, a system, or even a path. It is the insight that we have into the reality of life, a living insight that fills us with understanding, peace, and love." Close quotes. So in other words, he's talking about the freedom that is based upon a realistic view, a realistic approach to all those uncertainties that pervade our lives. This is from an author by the name of Mark Batterson. He says, "Embrace relational uncertainty. It's called romance. Embrace spiritual uncertainty. It's called mystery. Embrace occupational uncertainty. It's called destiny. Embrace emotional uncertainty. It's called joy. Embrace intellectual uncertainty. It's called revelation." So accepting the uncertainty in our lives, then, is really about accepting that everything, and I mean everything, is impermanent. There are no guarantees. But perhaps another way to think about this is that if we embrace the uncertainty, then every day is a new day. Everything is fresh. We have an open, curious, don't-know mind about everything we encounter when we get up tomorrow, when we get up the day after tomorrow. And we can really open to the wonder and the open with wonder and curiosity to life as it really is, rather than fear and contraction when we try to nail things down, when we try to assure that we have certainty in our lives. Speaking of uncertainty. So, I'm one of these people that has spent most of my life denying or trying to deny the certainty of uncertainty. I'm a planner. I'm someone who buys the next jar of peanut butter when the current one's only halfway gone. I always show up early. Let me get this thing fixed. Bear with me here. My sock drawer is organized. You sort of get the picture. Some of my friends tease me and they call me the plan man because I've always got things scheduled. So with that in mind, my wife Kay and I spent the first half of this year downsizing our house, in which we've lived for 25 years, and getting ready to put it on the market. And my plan, my certainty, was that we would get the house ready, put it on the market, it would sell, we'd move to our new place, slam dunk. Well, as the saying goes, man makes plans and the universe laughs, because whatever could have gone wrong with that situation, in fact, did go wrong. And from my perspective as a planner, as someone who's craved certainty, it was a nightmare. And my initial reaction to that uncertainty of the difficulty selling the house, there was tons of problems. I became very anxious. I began to look for things to do differently. I began to look for things to change, that I could nail something down. I tightened up. I just bugged the heck out of our realtor. I called him every day, do this, do that. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? I got angry. But eventually, after much frustration and much hand-wringing, I realized at a very fundamental level that beyond what we had already done, there was nothing else I could do that would make a difference. It didn't matter what I wanted to happen. It wasn't up to me. It wasn't going to happen. And as I began to watch my reaction using the tool of mindfulness that we teach, I could really see how it was manifesting in my body. I got tight, my jaw gets tight, I get headaches, I get tense, I start obsessing about what's the next thing to do. I could see this pattern of vigilantly scanning the environment for something to grab onto, some certainty to grab onto, something that would give me back a sense of control. Anything to alleviate that sense of uncertainty about where this whole house thing was going. More ideas for the realtor, but nothing was working. I was just running into walls. And my old patterns of trying to organize and control and fix things weren't helping. In fact, they were just making me more anxious and more miserable. And those of you that were around me during that time can attest to that. I see some of my KM friends here who heard me talk about that a lot at KM. But I just finally ran out of options. There was just nothing else I could do. The house wasn't selling. And it was just either keep doing what I was doing and continue to suffer, or shift gears and try to do something differently. Trying not to be so reactive or so identified with all that was going on in terms of the challenges of selling our house. So after much hand-wringing, I really had no other choice, I felt, except to try to embrace the uncertainty of the situation. I can't make this be any different than it is. And once I was able to do that, or begin to do that, I could really begin to feel myself start to relax a little bit, to start to let go of some of that need for control, to stop grasping for solutions. And I really began to have an experience of some of the freedom that I think comes from letting go in those situations, the freedom that the Dharma promises, that when we really surrender to the uncertainty, there's a lightening, there's a freedom that came with that. And I really experienced that firsthand. And this was well into some months of the process. And I think this is what we're really called upon to do by the teachings of the Dharma when we're in a situation that's fraught with uncertainty, is just surrender to it, just give into it. Because we can fight it and fight it and fight it, and we're just going to get more and more distressed. And I really begin to see what a false refuge all of this planning and control is for me. It's what Tara Brock uses that term. She's one of my teachers. And the need for control and predictability in my life was such a false refuge. It wasn't a true refuge. It wasn't giving me anything but pain and suffering. And I was really, probably for the first time, see so clearly in my life that by creating or trying to create this illusion of certainty, the price was a narrowing of my experience that I talked about earlier, that I was really blocking out parts of my life and seeing life through with blinders on. But by beginning to open to that, to open to the uncertainty of things, I really felt a spaciousness that kind of arose with that, a real lightening, as I said, a real weight coming off. And now in retrospect, when things were resolved, the house sold, we got moved, I was really able to be grateful for the teacher that this house thing had been. It had really been a very effective teacher of this lesson for me. And I think that's what happens when we can embrace and sort of lean into these experiences of uncertainty rather than deny them and push them away. And the additional benefit for me was that I didn't have to expend so much energy trying to control things, trying to keep everything orderly or lined up the way I felt it needed to be. Now, that's not to say I don't still try. That's not to say that that's not still my default. But I think I've gotten a little bit better about catching it. This is a poem from Hafiz, the Sufi poet, called Deepening the Wonder. He says, "Death is a favor to us, but our scales have lost their balance. The impermanence of the body should give us great clarity, deepening the wonder in our senses and eyes of this mysterious existence we share and are surely just traveling through. If I were in the tavern tonight, Hafiz would call for drinks, and as the master poured, I would be reminded that all I know of life and myself is that we are just a mid-air flight of golden wine between his pitcher and his cup. If I were in the tavern tonight, I would buy freely for everyone in the world, because our marriage with this cruel beauty of time and space cannot endure very long. Death is a favor to us, but our minds have lost their balance. The miraculous existence and impermanence of form always makes the illuminated ones laugh and sing." So let's do a brief reflection if we could. Just get a comfortable position and close your eyes if you would. Excuse me. And now bring to mind a situation in your life in the near future where you find yourself either wishing or longing or hoping for a predictable outcome or for some certainty. It might be a raise on your job, the outcome of a critical game for your favorite team, or your child getting into a specific college, but any situation where you are longing for a particular outcome, and just sit with that for a moment. And now bring your awareness to how that feels in the body. Can you feel any tightening, any constriction? Can you feel a pull toward certainty? Can you feel a longing for a specific outcome? And just sit with that feeling for a moment. Just really open to that experience. Now allow yourself to let go of that wished for outcome, whatever that longing was. And open to the possibility that a different outcome may occur than the one you are longing for. An outcome that you don't know. You have no way of knowing. An outcome that remains a mystery. And now checking back in with yourself in terms of how you're feeling and what's going on in your body now. Do you notice any lightening, any increased spaciousness, less tension, less grasping? Okay, you can open your eyes. But you might play with that later, just to sort of back and forth with that, because I think it's sometimes a useful way to just open to the possibility that something other than what we hope for, wish for, long for might happen, and can we be okay with that? This is from Mark Epstein. He's a psychiatrist and Dharma teacher in New York. He says, quote, "Trauma is not just the result of major disasters. It does not happen to only some people. An undercurrent of trauma runs through ordinary life, shot through as it is with the poignancy of impermanence. I like to say that we are not suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. We are suffering from pre-traumatic stress disorder. There is no way to be alive without being conscious of the potential for disaster. One way or another, death and its cousins, old age, illness, accidents, separation and loss, hangs over all of us. No one is immune. Our world is unstable and unpredictable and operates to a great degree, and despite incredible scientific advancement, outside our ability to control it." He goes on to say, "The willingness to face traumas, be they large, small, primitive, or fresh, is the key to healing from them. They may never disappear in the way we think they should, but maybe they don't need to. Trauma is an eradicable aspect of life, and we are human as a result of it, not in spite of it." End quote. So then how do we embrace this uncertainty in our lives? What do we need to do? Well, as I talked about a little while ago with the situation with our house, we start by bringing mindful awareness to it. We start by just sitting with it, sitting with the uncertainty. And then we try to create the intention to be with it, to embrace it, to lean into it. And from that, I think we can begin to experience some of that spaciousness around it that I talked about earlier. We make a conscious effort to drop the illusion of certainty when we catch ourselves going there. We challenge that. And so rather than retreat from feelings of uncertainty, rather than retreat from feelings of uncertainty like fear and aversion, we go toward it, we embrace it. We open to whatever is going on, whatever life is at that moment, when we bring presence and mindfulness to it. And that's how we begin to stay present with uncertainty and move through it and take it with us as we go. We embrace all of the ambiguity of life. This is from Anne Lamott, the writer. She says, quote, "Your problem is how you are going to spend this one and precious life you have been issued. Whether you're going to spend it trying to look good and creating the illusion that you have power over circumstances, or whether you're going to taste it, enjoy it, and find out the truth about who you are." And again, I would argue that there's freedom in doing this. It's sort of like swinging on the rope over the river and letting go, and just that exhilaration when you let go and fall into the water. It can really be not only freeing but exhilarating if we embrace it positively. They say in AA, let go and let God. And with apologies to AA, I would say let go and let the Dharma with regard to uncertainty. So I'd like to end with a couple of poems from two of my favorite poets. The first one is Billy Collins, who some of you may know. He's the former poet laureate of the U.S., and this is called Dharma. He says, "The way the dog trots out the front door every morning without a hat or an umbrella, without any money or the keys to her doghouse, never fails to fill the saucer of my heart with milky admiration. Who provides a finer example of life without encumbrance? Thoreau in his curtainless hut with a single plate, a single spoon? Gandhi with his staff and his holy diapers? Off she goes into the material world with nothing but her brown coat and her modest blue collar, following only her wet nose, the twin portals of her steady breathing, followed only by the plume of her tail. If only she did not shove the cat aside every morning and eat all his food, what a model of self-containment she would be. What a paragon of earthly detachment. If only she were not so eager for a rub behind the ears, so acrobatic in her welcomes, if only I were not her God." And then this from Mary Oliver, who many of you know, and I think this poem of all of hers expresses the freedom from embracing uncertainty. She says, "When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps his purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I look upon time as no more than an idea. And I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy and as singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does toward silence. And each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's all over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was a bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world." So my wish for all of us as we enter the new year is to live fearlessly with uncertainty and change. So let's sit for just a moment. So thank you for your time and attention. Wish you a happy new year. I hope it's filled with the freedom of uncertainty and many blessings. Thank you.